Well, the cult of Trump has won the 2024 United States election. The wall of separation between church and state in the United States, if it ever truly existed to begin with, is gone. Therefore, since it would be wise to start hiding my faith, my paganism, I will do the opposite. And I am going to stop hiding. I will be opening with the Druid prayer and chants for Awen. Awen is the Welsh word for divine inspiration, for the blessing of the divine as I move forward. Grant, O gods, thy protection, and in protection, strength, and in strength, humility, and in humility, understanding, and in understanding, knowledge, and in knowledge, the knowledge of justice, and in the knowledge of justice, the love of it, and in the love of it, the love of all existences, and in the love of all existences, the love of the divine and of all goodness. Hi, hello, yes. Now that I have somewhat gotten my shit together after this election debacle, stopped sniffling and sighing and futilely raging, I'm back to say it is past time for a new approach. It's time to stop pointing fingers away from ourselves about whose fault it is that we lost against an increasingly rabid, misogynistic patriarchy in our bid to finally elect a woman as president. And for the second time, a superior female candidate, this time far superior. I do not believe I have seen a presidential candidate in my lifetime as qualified as Kamala Harris. For the second time, this superior female candidate was defeated by a bloated dotard, a lunatic criminal, a vaguely human-shaped hemorrhoid on the collective ass of America. That's what we've elected as president, instead of a qualified, strong, dignified woman. And no, I don't agree with every single policy of what the Harris-Wells administration would have adopted. But that is one thing we have to stop doing. When we are in a fight for our democracy, we need to let go of all the little shit. And I am talking as a white woman to my fellow liberal white women, because that is the group that I have the right to speak to. We, as a cohort, have a lot of work to do. We, as a cohort, need to recognize that we have not done everything that we could and should have done. Not ever in this country's history. There's blame to go around for this election loss and for all of the wrongs in society. Lots of blame. And we've been very busy, us white women, divvying out the blame to everybody else. And saying, oh, but we're doing everything we can. We're part of the good people. We mean well. We're doing our best. But are we really? Truly? Have we inconvenienced ourselves? Have we sacrificed, like our ancestors had to win the right to vote in this country? Like our ancestors had to fight for reproductive freedom, which we have now lost. White women, liberal white women, it's our responsibility to look at ourselves and fix our shit. And we should have done it before, and I include myself. I believed during the campaign this year, I believed I was doing everything I could, and I did a lot more than I've ever done before. I never used to be interested in politics. So I felt like, yeah, I'm doing everything I can, but in reality, no, I wasn't. There was more I could have done. I could have made myself uncomfortable for the sake of the nation and the world, but I didn't. And it's too late now. So moving forward, we need to recognize, first of all, that it's a waste of time to point our fingers at everybody else. We need to point our fingers and our mirrors at ourselves first and fix our shit. There's a lot of it to fix, too. One of the topics I'd like to cover is fruit of the poisonous tree. You may recognize that from Law and Order, which I'm old enough to have seen the originals of. So that's going to come up as a topic, not necessarily today. We have to focus on owning our own part in this disastrous loss. Because that is, in fact, the only part we can actually fix. If, and it's a big fucking if we face some hard home truths about ourselves. There is a metric fuck ton more we white women should and could have been doing all of our lives within our cohort. And we failed every test. We have failed. Because what matters is the results. And the results are that we are now looking forward to a fascist dictatorship, the unified Reich. Congratulations. We have not done enough. And we're going to pay the consequences. But so is everybody else. And they don't deserve it. I don't know if we will ever have another free and fair election in this country in my lifetime. I really don't know. But if we do, we need to make sure that in the future, we do not cause the disasters that may occur. We need to make sure we're not part of the problem anymore. We are part of the solution. We need to grow up as individuals and as a cohort in this society. Clearly, what we liberal white women have been doing isn't enough to affect the changes that all Americans, other than the 1%, desperately need. It's on us. If we ever have another chance at a free and fair election, we never again repeat the failures of which we have been so consistently guilty up till now. And don't let your natural instinct for self-defense get in the way this time. That's what I've been doing. We're very good at self-defense and self-pity and all of the selves. We're good at those, white women. So use that selfish focus, point it at yourself, and figure out how you can be a better person. How you can be a part of the solution instead of acting like it. So we can feel good about ourselves when we lose, because we will not pay the level of consequence that other demographics will. Our loved ones of color do not deserve the additional burden of our emotions and our excuses about our repeated failures as white women to effectively unite with our sisters of color, so we would have some kind of hope of defeating the patriarchy and actually achieving true equality for all women, for all people in this country. We have failed to create the sisterhood, the unity within diversity that is potentially our greatest strength as liberally or progressively minded people. It's past time we found our own big girl pants and put them on all by our damn selves. Let's remember what we used to be like, white women, before the gangrene and the rot of the patriarchy set in. Let's look back through the mists of millennia of history, back to our true roots as fierce warrior women from Celtic or Gallic or Nordic or Eastern European or Mediterranean or other tribes. Let's rebuild ourselves in our ancestors' true image. Let's smash the image of the meek, demure, simpering, cowardly, spoiled, and whiny stereotype that we have earned as a collective. It's shameful. And we need to stop whining about how unfair it is and think about the fact that stereotypes are often rooted in fact. If we don't want the stereotype, let's address why we got it. It's counterintuitively an empowering gift to remember how to blush when we should feel shame. Shame has a purpose in our lives for growth and truth. And as a society, especially as a cohort of white women, we have been all about getting rid of shame, getting rid of guilt. No, they are useful in a certain context. They are, yes, we need to fight it and get rid of it when it is directed at us from the patriarchy, because their reasons why we should feel guilt and shame are completely different from the real reasons we should feel guilt and shame. But the real reasons do exist. There is a poisonous tree within us. Its roots are deep and thick. And that poisonous tree has filled our lives. We've borne poisonous fruit from that poisonous tree. Good intentions or not, that's the reality. We need to dig down, no matter how much it hurts, and uproot the poisonous lies that we have built our lives on. Yeah, and we did not necessarily plant the seeds. We learned it in Sunday school, how good Christian women are supposed to behave. I know, I was there. I know. I was sexually assaulted when I was 11 years old by a deacon in my parents' cult. Evangelical fundamentalism has completely fucked my life. But that's not an excuse. We are adults now. We have a responsibility to ourselves, yes, but also to the rest of the world. We need to grow up. Let's make our ancestors proud. Yeah, I know. We need to keep that meekness, that sweetness. We have to keep that mask alive. We have to wear it. You know, while the patriarchy is still in power, that is how we need to interact in order to get anywhere. But we have to remember it's a mask. It is not who we are. We need to wear those masks consciously and only when we must, to protect ourselves, more importantly though, to protect others. That's the purpose of those masks. The true face beneath, the faces of our ancestors, of our heroines. My personal heroine, Queen Boudica of the Iceni Celts. She stood against the might of the Roman Empire. She stood up for her tribe, her people, her daughters, and herself. She burned London to the ground when it was Londinium under the Roman rule. She punished the might of Rome. And yeah, she died. But she died on her own terms. She refused capture. And we have lost the dignity we used to have as fierce warrior women. We have bent our knees and our heads to the patriarchy because they have offered us a gilded, comfortable cage of luxury. We have accepted bribes from the patriarchy to stand with them against our sisters of color, against our loved ones from other tribes and other nations. We are guilty of accepting bribes so we could have a comfortable life. Not freedom. No, freedom was never on the table, ladies. White women, freedom was never truly on the table. You think the kind of marriage they have offered us is freedom? It's not. Yeah, you get a nice house. I used to have a lake house. I had a comfortable life. Money, threw parties, redecorated my house, gardened, and I was under the boot of the patriarchy the entire fucking time. But I left. Took my kids and left. And that was a good thing. But the roots of the poisonous tree were not all gotten rid of in my life. There was more I should have done. And I'm not alone. All of us have some guilt here over the state, the disgraceful state of our nation and our world. It's time to stop yelling about other people and blaming them and start thinking about how we can change ourselves to change results in the future if we get the chance. It's time to acknowledge our failure. It's time to escape the gilded cage and burn it so you're not tempted ever to go back in there to your luxury, your luxurious prison. That is not who we really are. We need to remember our ancestors and stop shaming them. My patroness, the Morrigan, is a goddess of war, death, and fertility. She scared me. I did not want to know her when I first became a pagan. I wanted Bridget as my goddess because she's home and hearth, she's like safe and comfortable, and that's not necessarily true, but that's how I saw her, as a baby witch, baby pagan, whatever I was. Morrigan came and got me, and I am so grateful she did. She told me she would thrust a sword down my spine until I remembered how to stand up straight. And that was terrifying. And it has been incredibly painful. But she has kept that promise. And that sword that she thrust along my spine is the only strength that I've had. It's the only reason I have any strength to stand. And it still hasn't been enough because I haven't fully learned my lesson. This is part of that. We've been complicit in the stupid, endless, mindless greed of the patriarchy for power and money at all costs. We have helped them keep it because they have offered us comforts, luxury, bribes, and we took them to our shame. You think that, you don't deserve to have suffering. You don't deserve to have a hard life. Who does? Who does deserve it? No, you don't deserve that golden cage. You deserve freedom, like everybody else. We white women are possibly the demographic that is most divided against itself. White women vote with the patriarchy more than any other subordinated group because they bribe us with luxury bought with their blood money, and we let them. We don't even consciously recognize the extent of the power the white patriarchy continues to hold over us. Women in general need to work on, I just discovered this concept of decentering men in our lives. We need to do that. I'm not going to speak on it because I'm just learning myself. Look it up. I just finished reading a book that really illuminated the history of white women within the patriarchy for me. It's called The Naturalist Society by Carrie Vaughn. I highly recommend it. It's based on true events and historical characters. The main character in the book is Beth, 1880s era ornithologist with enormous natural talent as a scientist. She's self-taught because no school of that time would accept her as a student in any scientific field. Women don't belong in science. This wasn't all that long ago, when the world still had vast tracts of unexplored land waiting to be mapped by explorers. Educational opportunity for women is a relatively new right that was hard won by our ancestors fighting for it. Nothing has been won, ever, by asking nicely and politely accepting every refusal, or not necessarily. They never couch it as a refusal. They couch it in terms of, not yet, this is a bad time. No, stop it. It's not a bad time. Time is precious. Stop using excuses that they give us for putting off our freedom. No. No more. We are still subliminally programmed that polite acceptance, submission is our only valid option, without recourse to any appeal of the patriarchy's inviolable mandates. The white patriarchy has never voluntarily given up power, and it is inextricably entwined with white evangelical Christianity, Christofascism. We need to understand that. So Beth, in the story, she marries a man of lesser ability than herself. He uses her brilliance to launch and sustain his own career, since her work can only be published and paid under a man's name. This sounds very familiar to so many of us, even in this day and age, I know, including me. So Beth, in exchange, gets a comfortable life with a man who's kind to her as he uses her. She has the best of both worlds. She gets to do the work she loves and keep her status and luxurious lifestyle by pretending she's neither more nor less than what her husband and brother, and before that her father, allow her to be. And that is exactly how white women have been. We want the best of both worlds. We want to do the work that we love. We want all the freedoms and the rights. But we also want to keep our status and our luxury, our gilded cage. We don't want the discomforts that come with true freedom. And that's bullshit. When Beth's husband dies in the book, she's unable to continue her work. She loses the illusion of freedom that her marriage allowed her. And let's remember, the illusion is all they ever willingly offer to anyone but cis white Christian men. She cannot accept this. And through various it is a juicy book, various circumstances, she creates a social scandal by trying to have her own career, to assert her own intelligence and personal liberty. When her family finds out that she won't willingly stay in her pretty golden cage, they trick her into a lunatic asylum. And this is very common for us white women. This is a great fear that we have legitimately, that maybe other groups don't necessarily understand because they never got offered the bribes we were. So Beth's own mother and brother have her involuntarily committed for, of course, hysteria. And you know, one thing we'll talk about, not today, but in the future, the role of trusted older women, our mothers, our grandmothers, matriarchs, their role in supporting the patriarchy. We're going to take a quick detour in case it's useful. Hystero is the Greek root for the word uterus. So the very word hysteria is steeped in misogyny, providing an immediate, an automatic way for men to shrug off any passion in a woman as irrational behavior, while also implying that men never get hysterical because they don't have a uterus. Where would the hysteria come from? This is all despite thousands of years of history that proves the contrary. Gaslighting, they're very good at it. White men are in fact more prone in many cases to hysterical, irrational behavior than women of any color. since they are completely unaccustomed to any opposition to any of their wishes. We see it, recently in childish violence like the Nick Fuentes, your body, my choice garbage. Just the latest bullshit from gross, spoiled white guys who should be disqualified from power as a group for their utter failure to achieve lasting peace and prosperity throughout the world, despite more than adequate resources and all the power forcibly exerted by them over the centuries and millennia. The Dark Ages through colonialism, up through slavery into the modern era, civil rights movement, all throughout history. White men have failed. They need to be disqualified from leadership as a group. They can earn it, maybe, but they need to earn it just like everybody else. They need to face the kind of obstacles that they have erected in everyone else's way throughout history. And if they cannot get past the obstacles, they do not earn leadership, ever. What white Christo-fascist men fear is, one of the things they fear, is that white women will realize we are the source of a lot of their power, more than we think, most often indirectly, where their mothers, sisters, wives, daughters, they depend on us for our complicity in their crimes against all life. They depend on us for that, and we have gone along with it. We need to accept that guilt. It is ours alone. Of course, they prefer that we accept the golden cage they offer us, full of all the comforts we love. I just told you about my lake house in a, nice neighborhood. We can do whatever we want, as long as we fill it with children for the white men who keep us as livestock to breed their children, and servants to clean their homes, make sure they're comfortable after their day of wreaking havoc, their day of greed, the pursuit of money and power at all costs, as long as those costs are paid by groups other than white Christo-fascist men. No price is too high as long as they don't pay it. And for this, for a pretty prison, we have lent them our talents and our strengths through the illusion of partnership. Shame on us. I had that comfortable life. I escaped, and I did lose my support network. Almost completely. When I left my white evangelical Christian husband of 15 years, it was a 15-year marriage, 3 kids. I was a single mom after that. No training. I was raised, even though it was the 80s, I was raised in that traditional, your purpose is to be a broodmare for a white man. That's how I was raised. I didn't learn skills. I didn't pursue my own education. I wasn't supposed to. Shame on me for accepting that. As a single mom, I was poor. And now I'm a middle-aged crone, getting old. I'm still poor. But I have never regretted leaving. I've regretted a lot of choices I've made since then, but I don't regret leaving. Never have. We need to leave the men that do not respect us, who keep us locked in a golden cage for their comfort and convenience. We must leave them. Get those divorces. There's a lot of stuff going around about MAGA men crying about getting dumped. It's not enough. We need to do more. Get divorced. Leave them. Make them stand on their own feet and learn to stand on yours. If you ever believed a patriarchy-style marriage is a real partnership, look again at the women of every color, including ours, who are now suffering and even dying in agony because white Christian men, Christo-fascist men, deny them life-saving medical care, terrorizing their doctors and other health caregivers with a life sentence in prison for the most basic intervention in a pregnancy gone wrong. The maternal and infant death rates are already skyrocketing in red states. And the Orange Hitler hasn't even taken the throne yet. Open your eyes. Face it. You did this. We did this. Not here to condemn anyone. We don't have the time for pointless blame games. But we do need to acknowledge our guilt and accept the responsibility of fixing our wrongs. No one has time for our endless excuses and crying and whining. Nobody has time for that, including ourselves. We don't have time for that. Our kids sure don't. We must empower ourselves so we can do our part to save society instead of continuing to help destroy it by blindly, numbly, sweetly complying with the tyranny of white Christo-fascist men. I don't know exactly where the channel's going, if it's going anywhere, and I'm debating the wisdom of keeping social media at all. But I know I have to keep moving forward. And I know I need to accept my responsibility as a white woman who has in the past been complicit in the crimes of the patriarchy. Don't let them control you with their bribes. They'll control you with bribes until they can't. And then they will control you with force, and they'll call it love or looking out for your best interest. When they have you committed to the lunatic asylum and they leave you there with no books, no paper, nothing to do except sit there meekly, quietly, submissively, they can still do that. And they do still do that. They call you crazy, hysterical, and they lock you up. Guess what? Other groups go through worse things. If that's what happens, if that's your part to play, you need to accept it. Stand up on your own 2 feet and get out of your golden cage. Throw it on the fire of purification. Get rid of it so you're never tempted to go back in. Dump your MAGA men. Dump your MAGA friends, including women. No more whining about, oh, but we just want to have friends and build a community, and how can we reach out to them if we won't talk to them? No, it hasn't worked. Being friends with conservative white women, MAGA women, hasn't worked. Cut them off. Think of surgery during the Civil War. Even now, if you get an infection, say from frostbite, You get an infection that leads to gangrene, that leads to sepsis. You know what the only cure is? Amputation. You cut off the diseased limb, or you die slowly and in agony, and we are finding out the hard way. We need to cut them off. They are a disease, and they need to be cut off from our lives, all of them. Your mother, your grandmother, your sister, your husband, your father, your brother, I don't care who. You can and you should get rid of them if they are working for the patriarchy, if they are MAGA voters, if they are Christo-fascists. And yeah, you may need to leave your faith. What kind of faith is based on oppression and lies? Christianity is inherently patriarchal, especially the white evangelical versions. Get out. Leave. Leave your churches. Go back to your true roots. Cut them off. They're diseased. And the whole body has been poisoned. Root out the poisonous tree from your life while you still have a life. Dig up the roots. They're strong, they're deep, they're thick, and it's going to hurt like hell. But you dig it up and you throw it all on the fire. That's what we're faced with. We do it or we don't, but we stop making excuses. That's it.